Welcome, bienvenue. Welcome to another live stream. This is Modern Sales Meltdown with David Chernick and myself, Gareth Rex, man with the hat. We talk about all the topics in sales that maybe you've been frightened to ask about, and hopefully give you some inkling as other approaches that could be taken to the same old problem. Today's topic is no different. Really, it's the thing that all salesmen fear: when deals ghost you.
Why do they ghost, man? You know, I do the objection handling masterclass.
Right.
Yeah. It's kind of like you can apply for 3 places on it, actually. Usually the first Tuesday of every month. It's an hour.
Okay.
And actually, invariably, one of the participants, when I ask them, you know, what are the most common objections that you face? Because, of course, I want the participants to go away with something they can immediately put into practice.
Right.
Somebody will, at least one person will say that they get ghosted by people that they quoted for, that they're dealing with. And they say the deal ghosted me. It's not strictly an objection. In fact, technically, it's the absence of an objection. It's a sign that you haven't found out what the objection is. Or
it could be that they've got other fish to fry at the moment, but they're still
The point of ghosting is when somebody doesn't get back to you. They go quiet. You can't get hold of them. They won't reply to messages.
Zero communication.
Zero communication. And it's not that this deal ghosted me. It's not deals ghosting you. It's people who are avoiding those uncomfortable conversations. You know, when a prospect disappears, it's rarely because they suddenly forgot that you exist. It's usually because continuing the conversation with you would require them to say something that maybe they don't feel able or safe or incentivized to say. You know, ghosting is a human avoidance behavior.
But all right, David, how do you tell the difference between ghosting and, for instance, a perfectly legitimate crisis that has taken center stage and put any communication with you on the back foot?
That is always a possibility, I guess. I mean, I've had people who've died on me, and I've still got a message back from someone saying, "I'm so sorry, you're going to have to leave it for the time being because a crisis has happened." You know, I mean,
well, I don't want to
go down. I don't want to go down that tangent because it is not the main reason why it happens.
Oh, really? So what you're stating, loud and proud, is that the main reason why apparent ghosting happens is because they're actually ghosting you.
Well, it's because it's an avoidance behavior. Actually, you know, the seller is participating in that. Yeah, it's a two-way thing.
Well, shall we bring on our team?
Let's bring her on. Let's bring her on.
Okay, so here's Maya. Hello, Maya. We're just going to get her into position. There we go. And we're going to just welcome her into the studio. So this is Maya.
Hi, what's up?
Maya, we're back in the studio with David and myself, Gareth. And today we're talking about why deals ghost you.
Ghosts in the sales machine. It's the ultimate mystery, isn't it? You do all this work and then silence.
Yeah.
David, what's your take on where these deals just vanish to? What's your experience, Gareth? You've been wrestling with this for a while, right?
Well, yeah, we both, David and I have both been in the sales game for an awful long time. So we've had the chance to experience most varieties of it. So David, Maya wants to know, why does this happen? Why do people who have been perfectly rational, interacting with you, seemingly answering your questions, suddenly go quiet?
Okay, so as we just said, it's an avoidance behavior. Yeah, the seller is avoiding perhaps some sort of uncomfortable conversation. The buyer is avoiding that uncomfortable conversation. Maybe they want to say no. Maybe their objection just too difficult to articulate, or that kind of thing. That's usually what it is. And equally, the seller is avoiding confronting that issue. And actually, the time to confront it is, when do you think?
Not
Same with
sure.
everything in sales, right at the start.
Right at the start.
With any sales problem, you can almost always trace the source of that problem to the start of your interactions with people. Okay. So it's what I mean, ghosting is what happens when neither side ever made the risk explicit. They never made the risk of it not going anywhere. The risk of a no, or the risk of a really tricky objection. And so the silence is like the easiest exit as far as the seller's concerned. And buyers do that and sellers do that typical thing where they're chasing, I'm just checking in with you and all of that kind of stuff. And it's not pleasant to have to do, and it's not pleasant to be a buyer on the receiving end of those messages. Another chase message, another chase email, voicemail. So I just wanted to be able to firstly, for us to be able to articulate what is going on, because it's rarely that a new crisis has emerged where everything's had to stop. Right.
So if you find yourself at that point, what do you think is the first thing you should do?
Right. So this is, everybody always wants to know, what am I supposed to do when I'm in that position of being ghosted?
Right.
And I will tackle that, but I want to leave that just a little bit later in this live, because I want us to try and make a resolution to use that experience of being ghosted to stop it happening again.
All right. Well, to do that, we need to prepare the way. So we need to do so. Can we reverse engineer it and say, okay, we know we've been ghosted, so now I'm going to put us back at the point where we should have done something to prevent that perhaps happening at all.
Okay, so if the prospect hasn't already clearly articulated, what happens if they don't act,
right?
What decisions they're actually trying to make, what saying yes, let's go ahead, what that would force them to confront,
right,
deal with internally. Let me just stop that. Oh, have I lost my?
No, it was still here.
Okay, so I don't know why that came. I don't know why that interrupted me. What they would have to do if they were going to say yes, what that would commit them to. And you have this in your business, Gareth, as we've discovered with web designers as well. When somebody says yes to going ahead, pressing the button, proceed on the LinkedIn marketing, or on lead generation, or on websites, usually the prospect has to then do some work as well. So there's an avoidance of that, perhaps. But sellers are often, mistaking politeness and engagement or good meetings,
right,
for commitment, and they're not the same thing. Momentum without risk is just motion, isn't it? We're just traveling along. There's not actual.
It's just busy work. If you don't have anybody willing to put skin in the game.
So
then,
exactly.
Yeah.
So just to ask Maya, I see ghosting as thriving where the seller colludes with the buyer in maintaining that comfort, which doesn't get us anywhere.
What's your thoughts, Maya? Oh dear, I think she may have gone quiet on us. Hang on, let me try that again. Sorry about that.
Hi.
Yeah, can you, David, would you repeat the question for Maya, please?
Yes, so the question is that the ghosting thrives when the sellers collude in maintaining comfort with the prospect, right at the start. We're not figuring out we're not having that conversation before we quote.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to happen when you're doing your you're
Hey there.
when you're just trying to establish a relationship. It doesn't have to happen when you are qualifying or anything like that. Yeah, but before you start doing some heavy lifting, before a meeting, before that first sales meeting, before sending a proposal, anything like that, we need to know what happens if they don't act. Yeah, so what decision they're actually trying to make, and what saying yes would mean for them. Yeah. And
so what's your actual question for Maya? Because you've
sorry, I'm rambling.
You made it into a ramble. Go on.
I did make it into a ramble. So let me ask Maya this. What are the sorts of things, Maya, that you think that sellers should be doing right at the start of the quoting, or right before you have your first sales meeting, in order to avoid being ghosted later on?
Okay.
If I was guiding a seller, I'd say, before you dive into any pitch or formal meeting, pull back and ask something like, what's the real reason you're exploring this now? What's the most frustrating part of dealing with this problem yourself? Something that gets them talking about the pain instead of a solution they've already decided on. That tells you where their head's at.
So what do you mean, to ascertain how much of a pain it is, therefore indicating how much effort, time, and money they're willing to throw at it?
Exactly. Pain size is a pretty reliable predictor of effort to solve, not just budget. If someone describes the problem as mildly annoying, that usually translates to a see what's out there budget and minimal buy-in. But if they're describing it as completely derailing their day or costing them key clients, that's the signal that they're actively looking for an escape hatch and are probably open to spending whatever it takes. That's real urgency versus shopping around.
I'm so glad that you said that, Maya. And the reason I'm glad, and I don't want to upset anybody, I know, Maya, you can't get upset, but that is what Maya's just told us is the stock answer. Yeah.
Right.
And there'll be people watching this, hearing what she just said and nodding. Yeah, that sounds about right. However, even with that happening, we still get ghosted, right?
Then I'm going to throw the same question back at you, David.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to take us to that point.
Hang on, Maya. David's going to have a bite of this cherry.
Okay, so I'm going to take us back to that point where you are being ghosted, right?
Right.
And the common question for me, from my clients and people that come onto my objection handling masterclass is, what should I be saying next? And I'll say, what have you been doing? They go, well, I'll send a message saying, well, perhaps, let's catch up next quarter, or I just need to, or the seller might tell you, I just need to run this by someone, or we're still thinking about it.
Right.
And then we end up just, saying, okay, well, shall I change the date, or, and going into all that chasing. So to avoid it happening, we want to be doing certain things. We want to be naming the decision that must be made. So when we are sending our quote, or before we send our quote, we want to be saying to the client or to the buyer, here are the outcomes. If you like it, and you previously, if you've qualified it properly, you told me that you wanted this, if you were going to buy it on this date, that would require you pressing proceed on this date. That's one option that you'll have. Another option you'll have is just to say, no, that's not for us. And a third option might be that you have some questions. Yeah, might be objections, but there might be some questions. And this from, if anybody's using, the sort of the Zero tools to send quotes and proposals and stuff, or any other quoting engine, invoicing engines even, there'll always be out of the box, the standard template will have something like proceed, go ahead, no, or ask the seller, like a question button. Yeah. So those are the things that they need to have. They need to be able to expect at the time that they are receiving that quote. They know what the different outcomes are. And what that means is, and a lot of sellers, I think, will find that difficult because they don't want to give an option of no. They don't want to present that as an option.
Right. So Maya, what's your reaction to that?
It's funny. Most sellers think avoiding no protects them from rejection, but actually it just prolongs the uncertainty and wastes everyone's time. Presenting all options from the start sets clear expectations and makes it easier for buyers to move forward if they really are serious about solving the problem. Giving them a clear exit button doesn't scare off the right clients. It filters out the ones who can't commit to a decision.
Right. But some might say, but what about those who are potentially going to turn to excellent clients, but who are wavering because of the unknown? It could scare them off, could it not?
It's where a little bit of a healthy challenge comes in, doesn't it? If someone genuinely can't decide with the options presented to them, that hesitation says more about their decision making or lack thereof than it does about whether your solution would work for them. You can frame it. If it's not right for you, that's totally fine. But let's be clear which path we're on. If that pushes someone away, maybe they weren't ready to make a real decision in the first place.
Right. Okay.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because it frees you up to focus on the actual buyers, the ones who can confidently choose yes or no.
Right. And just to add to that, it also gives you a chance to coach that buyer so they know what's coming. A decision will land on your desk at some point, and it might not be the easiest decision, but there'll be one, right? Are you prepared for that? Because I don't want to be that seller that does, the chasing afterwards and the just checking in and the sort of the theatre of persistence that just drags everybody down. So as a last resort wording, I did say towards the end, I'll try and, if you are already in a ghosted mode, having not prepared the buyer in advance for what the decision outcomes could be, we can go back with them, but we don't want to be chasing them, okay? Because it's just boring, hellish emails and messages.
Oh, chasing on the horns of a decision is the worst in my book. There's no proper way of accelerating it. You loads of unknowns there.
Well, here's what I'm going to suggest.
Right.
A call that goes along these lines, or a message, and you could say something like, I might be wrong, but it feels like this deal has lost momentum. Spell it out to them. If now's not the right time, that's completely fine.
And then
hang on, Maya. Maya, hang on a second. Sorry.
I love how you mentioned that. So if now's not the right time, that's cool. It's fine. I'd rather close this out cleanly than keep nudging you. Yeah. So we were asking them, so which is it? Has it lost momentum and it just needs some extra impetus, or you've got a burning question? Or if now is not the right time, then it can be no, I'm not going to go ahead, or it can be no, not at this moment. And we have talked about consent in the past and how to get a no out of people. So, that's how I would phrase it. And, the goal isn't to save the deal. The deal is not happening. The goal is to end the ambiguity. Okay. Yeah. And if you need to send that sort of message often, that's your signal to redesign the conversation earlier on.
Maya, have you got any last comment? Because we're just about to close out the podcast.
No, I think that's a great framework. You're basically hitting them with the clarity they should have already received up front. It's almost like you're mirroring back the lack of decisiveness rather than pleading with them to reconsider. That's actually a really strong approach. It shows you respect their time, but you're not going to waste yours anymore.
Yeah, it's almost like David knows what he's doing. But what I would say, but David, in a way, it kind of mirrors your approach at the beginning of the deal, which is to be absolutely clear up front what you're proposing all the way through. And I think that's what if it comes down to it, and we were going to summarize, it's be absolutely clear what the intentions are from the start. So if you get to this point, you can be absolutely clear to point out what the intention should be at the end.
So exactly. So if you're being ghosted regularly, that is not bad luck. It is feedback. It's not about your follow-up technique.
Right.
It's about the courage earlier on in the conversation. And once you fix that, then you'll find that ghosting largely disappears.
And thank you so much, Maya. I'm going to wish her goodbye now. Before we,
and I put a couple of links in the comments.
Yes, I was going to literally point them out, but they're only on the Facebook side. So if you want to find it, go to Facebook.
On the LinkedIn.
Look for Treacle Sales, and David will copy them onto the LinkedIn as well. And to all of you watching, I hope you found that very useful. I know it's often the most irritating part of the sales process, that intervening time, and never quite, because you may think that you've done all those things and then you get ghosted. It is part of that game, is to be able to say to yourself, how much effort am I going to put into this deal? Has it sunk, or is it still alive with a beating heart? And this part, the skill of it is to have done the work up front to make sure it has as good a chance as any of maintaining its strengths and ability to close. Thanks a lot, David. Yet another incisive Modern Sales Meltdown, and thank you guys for watching. There was a sudden influx of you I saw on X, amongst other things. Thank you for tuning in. If you do perchance come across either of us out in networking land or elsewhere, do please give us some feedback. It's always very useful. But also make sure you stay with us. We are here weekly, somewhere around 10 o'clock, usually on Wednesday, on Tuesdays and on Wednesdays. And just be sure to keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and try and look after that mental health. Until next week, bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.